Facebook going Meta. Mark Zuckerberg announcing that Meta will be the name of the umbrella company that owns Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. Think of this like when Google changed the name of its parent company to Alphabet. Here's Zuckerberg making the announcement today.
Today, we're seen as a social media company. But in our DNA, we're a company that builds technology to connect people. And the metaverse is the next frontier, just like social networking was when we got started.
I want to bring in NBC News technology correspondent Jake Ward. Jake, great to see you. So I think a lot of people are wondering, what is this name change all about, and what actually changes about the company here besides now that its parent is Meta?
Well, Alison, according to Mark Zuckerberg in his founder's letter and according to his call with shareholders, this is basically the beginning of a new chapter for the company in which he's going to be trying to create essentially a new infrastructure for the next internet, an internet in which we no longer communicate via devices in the way we do now, but instead we actually transport some digital version of ourselves into a metaverse, which is what he calls it. And it will, he says in his word, unlock the potential that is currently being stifled, constrained, he said, by the platforms and policies of today. It's a very interesting, very meta idea, as you can imagine.
It's so meta.
And it seems to be the beginning of what he will think of as a sort of a new world for profit and innovation.
So we all think of Facebook right now, right, as the social media site. We think of WhatsApp. We think of Instagram. But let's talk about the strategy going forward. I mean, we're talking about things like augmented and virtual reality. Do we have any sense of how Facebook is going to get to the metaverse, or are we just at the very early stages of imagining this?
It is very early stages. They do talk some financials. They say that they're going to be spinning off their their virtual reality division to the tune of about $10 billion with a B. They expect to spend or at least lose that much money in putting this together. So they're evidently prepared to spend billions of dollars on this concept. But I think really important here, Alison, to also point out the timing here. Of course, this is happening at the same time that a consortium of journalists, of which NBC is one, has put out, incredible amounts of information about how Facebook knew that its harms were not meta, they were in the real world. We, in fact, have seen real world risks and harms emerging from what we have prior to this considered a sort of digital social world. And so very interesting that he's rebranding at that moment. But it does seem to be, at least if the money is to be believed, a very earnest effort to try to create something new and presumably be out in front of everybody else in doing it.
Let's talk about that a little more for a second. I mean, Jake, you were just here, on Monday talking to us about those Facebook papers. What can, and I realize this is sort of like a crystal ball question, but I mean, how much can rebranding help the company, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's still Facebook. Is this something that can perhaps help Facebook put a new foot forward, or is rebranding just not enough here and they got to make some changes, real changes?
It's a great question, Alison. I mean, for one thing, you and I are talking about it right now, right? And the fact that they are getting some attention for this rebranding is part of a vast PR strategy that seems to be paying off, at least for this day's news cycle, right? But it is also a very curious thing to see whether this is going to really reflect a new strategic reality. Is this damage control? It's probably a bit of both. I think people as smart as the people that run Facebook don't do anything without it serving multiple purposes. But, whether this is, the rebranding that the big tobacco companies did to get away from to do some damage control when they were found to be having tremendous real world harms, or is this the rebranding of Apple Computer as it moved away from computers? That all, of course, remains to be seen, Alison.
And look, you give incredible examples of rebranding that completely changed those industries, those companies. Jake, I'm married to a brand strategist. I have a feeling I'm going to go home tonight and get quite a lecture over dinner about what this means. I'll report back.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.